One conversation, three perspectives, honest debate on the stories shaping the travel industry.
Each episode tackles a live issue, big trend, or hot debate from across the travel industry.
Every week, we'll be joined by guests for honest conversations, strong opinions, and lively debate.
I'm James.
I'm Andy.
I'm Will.
Welcome to Let's Talk Travel.
On the 18th of June 2026, from almost nowhere, the FCDO announced that the UAE, Qatar, Oman, Bahrain, and Saudi Arabia were no longer unsafe for travel. This comes off the back of the news that US and Iran have reached an agreement after months of fighting and disagreement to hopefully continue peace and hopefully bring stability back to the region. With the news so fresh and potentially transformational for huge parts of travel, we had to jump in and share our important views and thoughts on this issue while it's still hot off the press. Let's dive in. Hello, guys. Welcome for this, I guess, ad hoc episode, not one that we'd planned, but with news such as this coming in, we had to try and get our opinions formed as quickly as possible. So thanks for jumping on such short notice. But I think this is really, really important and something that, as Let's Talk Travel is all about, is getting to the real hot topics as soon as possible. So this really wasn't on our bingo list of things to talk about this week, as I say. We've done several episodes in the last month talking about the instability of the region, what happens if this doesn't get resolved, what happens to travel in the medium and long term. And yet here we are. The FCDO only quoting yesterday that the US and Iran have announced a memorandum of understanding in relation to the conflict and the Middle East. They do say that the situation remains unpredictable and attacks could resume at short notice. But despite all of this, we are seeing people rejoicing on the trade press that this has happened. Ourselves, we've already talked about this between us, are, I guess, slightly positive, but also many questions which we'll get into. And even some of my clients have sent emails out only yesterday afternoon saying this is great news. And why not have a chat to us about booking one of your holidays to the region? So after less than 4 months of a huge war, and now we have a memorandum of understanding, this could be some game-changing news that we all need to think and talk about, which we're going to do in just a second. However, there's also the real possibility this isn't the end. The people very close to Trump in America have voiced their disappointment, their concerns about the fact that this is only really a 60-day truce, effectively, perhaps. And also the cost of the US government in terms of what they started off with and now where they are, and realistically where this leaves Mr. Trump, but also perhaps where Israel play a role going forward. So are we perhaps wrong to think that this is going to be the end of everything, or is this actually the time for us to start to really plan ahead, really think about travel coming back and the world getting back to some sort of normality? I don't know. I mean, this is why we're here. This is why we have Let's Talk Travel. And this is why we're going to share our opinions on this. So I don't know who wants to take this. Maybe, James, if I go to you first. You know, this is all seemed to have come out of nowhere, which I guess is great. But is this all a bit too soon? What's your initial thoughts on this?
One word, flabbergasted. Absolutely flabbergasted. 24 hours ago, there was still Israel and Lebanon bombing each other. We've got still huge amounts of political unrest in the region, and the ink isn't dry on the peace deal. Yet we've announced all things are peachy. Let's open the region and let's allow tourism back into the area. This is completely new. I've never seen this behavior before in over 20 years I've been in the industry. And probably the best example I can use is when I worked very, very closely with Egypt as a destination. And many years ago, when a plane through terrorism was bombed on taking off and was destroyed, and it was not a war, it was a terrorist act, that country remained closed to tourists for many, many months after the incident. And I'm flabbergasted.
One word from James then. Will, are you flabbergasted? Is that the word you'd use for this?
I want to know if he can actually spell flabbergasted. He's just heard someone say it and it sounded impressive. So I am pretty surprised, if I'm honest. And I know much as it disturbs me to agree with James, I wonder if it's a little bit too quick and sets a really dangerous precedent moving forwards on things. You know, they put the Foreign Office have put in their announcement the situation remains unpredictable, as you said. There's talk that if alarms sound, you go and find a shelter. That doesn't sound to me like a safe place to travel. Or no, that's unfair. That doesn't sound reassuring in terms of a place that you want to rush to right now. And I think a lot of the industry are probably saying, yeah, it's not immediate travel. We're not going to see an immediate bounce. We're looking for next year. But I'm genuinely surprised why the Foreign Office have gone so quickly on this. It does feel I can't work out what the political pressure is. So one thing I suspect is obviously the Middle Eastern carriers are quite important for routing passengers elsewhere. That connectivity through the Middle Eastern hubs is quite important. And with the FCDO advice as it was, that largely invalidated travel insurance for a lot of consumers. Now, what this change in status does is make that travel insurance valid again. And I wonder if it's less about travel to the region, but onward travel to various different destinations. But for right now, I'm just shocked, and I don't know why we couldn't have waited a couple of weeks, because I mean, I saw that news before I even saw Trump signing the peace deal. So you kind of go, well, we look like we've jumped pretty quickly on this.
So do you think the political pressure is there, or is it just because your mates in the risk management world have decided that it's better for insurance purposes this has happened?
I think my mates in the risk management world are having fits and looking at their spreadsheets right now in terms of what their liabilities potentially look like. You know, that we all hope, and I suspect it'll all be absolutely fine, but why now? You know, something's going on, and that's what surprises me.
I think I can contribute here. The Dubai alone, comfortably over 1.4 million tourists a year. So it's a popular destination, particularly for the Brits. We know that. Weather guaranteed, luxury hotels, beach resorts, it ticks all of those criteria. And of course, lots of all-inclusive hotels. We like that as well. So that's great for Dubai. We also noted Will's point, we've got the through traffic. The other thing we can probably just kick in here is that we know there's a huge amount of British people who work in Dubai, you know, comfortably over 250,000, who are contributing to that economy as well. So I imagine there are lots of political and economical factors that are pushing this. But to Will's point, why could there have not been some form of cooling off period just to let everyone reset? Now, we should add that it's great for the travel industry to have a destination open. It takes pressure off other markets. It will affect, there's going to be a knock-on effect to Lates and everything else. Thankfully, a lot of the airlines aren't going to just immediately rush back in there, because I think that's the smart thing to do. BA have already said they're not recommencing flights until October half term, which is smart for them. Virgin had already pushed it out to 2027. There's a few other airlines who are now looking at whether they reintroduce additional flights or just keep a limited rotation of flights going in. But again, I can only fear that it feels like the horse is bolted. I'm not sure why.
Well,
big thing for me is it's the middle of summer. So it's like 40, 50 degrees and it's low season for the destination. So it's not like people are going and, you know, everyone's going to go and lie on the beach. You know, it's too hot. You know, most people will not, certainly not, most people from the UK will not do that. So I have to come back to my, you know, my routing and the Middle Eastern hubs on the airlines, but we could have waited. Could have waited. I think what the other thing that amused me, Andy, sorry, is actually the way Australia have interpreted it and what they've put out versus what the Foreign Office put out. And the Foreign Office have the Foreign Office advice is really quite encouraging. It's like, right, it's open for business. But, you know, if you read lower down, there's a cautionary tale. But Australia have Smarter Traveller. That's their sort of equivalent. And they've changed it from don't travel to reconsider your need to travel. So that I think is probably where we should be. That feels like a better kind of statement. They go on in their opening paragraph, which I just want to quote to you, because as I say, the British have done it, but far more softened, and I think that's where the messaging has been lost. But Smarter Traveller writes, there remains a risk of military action. Follow local warning systems, and if warned of an imminent attack, move to an enclosed hardened shelter. That's not a destination I want to go on holiday to right now or take my family to.
Okay, so with the Australian words ringing around your head, perhaps, how do you think the trade will react to this? Obviously, FCDO advice is now, well, it's on the BBC website, it's in the trade press, probably been in the newspapers over the weekend. What do we think this may do in the next couple of months to agents or the trade in terms of selling the region? Do you feel like it will come back fairly quickly? We've talked before in other episodes that we think this could be a permanent scar, or James at least thinks this is a permanent scar on the region. But do you think this news changes anything in the short term? James, I'll come back to you because of your.
I think in the short term, my previous comments are still valid. I don't see anyone immediately today thinking, oh, great, I'm going to go now book my holiday for Dubai going in the next 2 to 3 months, both because of the nervousness around this agreement falling and failing. And to Will's point, it is so hot out there right now in that region that unless you're wearing sunblock 60, you're going to get fried. So I think the initial opinion from everyone as a consumer will be, it's nice to know that it's available, but I've already secured my travel plans for the year, or I'm looking at a last minute deal to somewhere maybe closer. Will it help Dubai, Qatar, and Saudi, because they're the three that have all had their restrictions reduced for 2027, maybe those February half-term breaks? That's where you may see that initial, okay, family saying, I'll kick it out and I'll look to 2027.
But just on the routes and the flights through, though, Will, what's your opinion on that? Do you think that we'll see more people coming longer haul now because of the sort of advice that it's okay to go through there?
Yeah, I think so. And actually, I disagree with James on that point. Yes, it is really hot, but we are in, and we've done an episode on it. We're in a late market at the moment. We're in a deal market. People are looking for those bargains. So what the region is going to have to do to attract people, I would suggest, is drop their prices. Hotels are going to have to come back and put great deals in. The extra lift on the flights, as we say, to different places. People are driven by a bargain. And okay, it may not be the numbers. I'm not suggesting we're getting back to numbers we were pre the war, but I am suggesting that there will be people that will try and be opportunistic. That's my big word for the day. Opportunistic in this and take advantage. And that's how I see it, because people will be looking for a deal. So you're shaking your head. Come on then.
I disagree, because if you know the market at the moment, you can go for a week in Turkey for £250. You can go to Cyprus. You can go to Bulgaria. You've got all these. There is so much inventory in the market already that, because the assets are already being distressed and sold at a lower rate than the operators would like, it means that if someone like an Emirates Holidays wanted to run a promotion, they'd have to run it at such a loss to come competitive in this market. Where it would have worked is had there not been that late market or that excess assets in the market, then they could have come in and swept up, because there would have been, now we've got all of this extra content, all these amazing deals. But I think because of the way the market is and because of the deals, family of four holiday to Turkey in July, you can get for under £1,000. The market has really got an issue at the moment with the amount of lates there are, because of the additional capacity they put in and what has happened this year so far.
So could it then flip the other way? Because we've talked about, where would we feel comfortable traveling to in the region? And again, on a previous podcast, and I think someone said Turkey was on their list of places that they feel comfortable going. Does that allow someone like Turkey to now to sort of push their prices back up if they think that confidence is coming back to the region in a late market, who's going to know that those deals were around back in May when people were a bit more desperate, and now in July there's an opportunity to reprice, or is that wishful thinking?
I think it's wishful thinking. I think it's already priced in the market, and now they're already at a very, very aggressive low rate. What it will do, which is a positive, is if there is peace, it will improve consumer sentiment and trust, which means those who have not booked a holiday yet will book, because they'll say, okay, I'm happy to go to Turkey now, or I'm happy to go to Cyprus, where they may have seen that region being not part of the conflict, but very close to that conflict. So ultimately for the travel industry, this is positive news that there's peace in the region. We want that because that provides greater security to everyone who works within the industry and hopefully creates more momentum in sales. And I'm sure we'll see some good stories coming out in the next 48 hours of operators saying, oh, I'm up year over year by 4%, or I'm up over week, quarter over quarter. So I think the consumer confidence piece is positive. But from a region perspective, I can only see UAE really at the earliest October half term seeing some success, and beyond that February half term. That will be the big win.
We will hold you to that, James. Will, what's your view?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is people have probably booked for lates now. We're late June, so that's probably the sum up. But I do think it will pick up. But exactly to James's point, actually, and I was still talking about that being short term. But September, October half term, looking for winter sun. I cannot believe that people won't look at the Middle East, and I cannot believe that bookings won't look at that. It won't sort of take that trajectory now, which is why this timing is so baffling, because we're talking about 60 days on the peace deal, which will take us to late August, perfect time for booking your winter sun. You've already taken your late deal in Europe, in Turkey, wherever it may be. The time is just baffling, and flabbergasted. There we go. Come back to James's word. But I think operators are going to capitalize, and I disagree with James slightly on that.
And can I just go to our final question then? So you've talked before about risk. You talked about the fact that you see potentially, if this conflict had gone on, that some of the carriers may have to fail because they might not be able to sustain their balance sheets through turbulent times. Do you see any of that changing again in light of this? I'll throw that back to you, Will, because you talked about it before.
I think you were the one that said a carrier was going to fail. I wasn't. If you look at the history of the Middle Eastern carriers, certainly the Saudi, the Qatar, the UAE airlines, they are state-backed, heavily funded. For many years they ran at a loss, and they have very deep pockets. So I don't actually see any of the main carriers failing. Potentially some ones on the periphery. I'd say this probably is a reassuring step on everything. And I think what this does do potentially, especially if the Straits of Hormuz do open and fuel prices come down, which is started to do, is actually that will have a positive effect, not just on those carriers, but on other carriers around the world, and probably some reassurance and stability to them.
Yeah. James, any thoughts on just the implications for carriers with this? Because you're obviously saying you think it's going to be winter / spring next year, and obviously Virgin are still out till winter 27. Do you see any change at all?
So to Will's point, they're very well funded and generally state-backed, the UAE carriers, and the other carriers are not generally focused on that area. They can pivot planes and reposition them into areas that will drive them revenues through that winter period, whether if that's the Caribbean or even to the Far East. Particularly BA have been smart at doing that. So, and actually, it'd be remiss of me not to say, BA has been a big winner during all of this. They repositioned planes very early. They were able to make a lot of extra money. That is a whole other podcast, should they be making so much profit, but ultimately supply and demand. So they were very quick to do that. And some of their long haul routes are basically sold out well into the end of this year. So BA, Virgin, some of these guys would have made some strong revenues from this crisis.
There you go. I mean, planning ahead is what we're all about, and de-risking. I mean, I guess that's very savvy of them rather than opportunistic, I would say. Okay, brilliant. Is there any final questions or thoughts around this before we jump into some quick fire questions?
No, the only thing I'll say is why don't we include in one of our later podcasts, I will do a few price checks on those October and February half-term rates and see how comparable they are in the market. We'll throw that in.
And why
Look
don't we
forward to
check
that.
numbers to see what lates look like to the Middle East over the next 3 months and see who actually got their predictions right?
Okay.
Follow up to come, people. Follow up to come.
Brilliant. Thanks for that, guys. Really, really hot topic, really, really hot thoughts and takes. And as I say, we'll return back to this, no doubt, in the coming weeks. But cheers. Now onto some quick fire questions, because we've covered a lot there, but there's some thoughts around what we may or may not do, what may or may not happen we've already touched on. So I'll throw a few quick fire questions. I just want yes or no, or your first response, please. Let's go to you first. James, would you travel to the UAE or the region next week? What do you feel about that?
No.
Will?
No. 100% no.
So let's go a bit further out then. Do you think in 60 days' time this will all still be settled? Do you feel like we'll feel a little bit more confident in a couple of months once the ink has properly dried on this? Will, what's your thoughts?
We will see some conflict over the next 60 days, but the peace will carry on. So yes, we'll feel more settled.
Interesting. James, how confident are you?
I'm not confident because of the news that broke this morning already from the Supreme Leader saying it was a pressurized move by Trump, and also the fact that Vance has already pulled out of one of the early peace talks that was supposed to be happening in Switzerland. So that all broke this morning. So I'm not hopeful, unfortunately.
So do we need to do another podcast tomorrow morning then when this is all
We might be doing it at this rate.
I know we're trying to be fast moving and active, but we can't keep sort of changing how we see things. Well, maybe we can.
Final question then. How do we think travel will return to the region for the second half of the year? Do you feel in a year-on-year basis we'll be back to where we were 2025? Yes or no?
No, we won't be where we should be in 2025. But if the peace talks are positive and it continues and peace remains, I think the initial winners will be probably Dubai and Abu Dhabi from a half-term perspective.
Will, what's your thoughts on that one?
No, I mean, he's contradicted himself as per usual, but no. You can't say it's not, the peace isn't going to hold and then say, oh, travel's going to go back. Anyway.
If peace holds, that's when travel, but it won't be 2025
numbers. The quick fire, hold to your, stick by your convictions, my friend.
It's the simple word of if there rather than flabbergasted. I think confused him, but there we go.
Yeah, simplicity.
That's the rapid fire round over. Thank you very much for your thoughts on that, guys.
Thanks to our sponsor, Travel Zoo, the club for travel enthusiasts. Join Travel Zoo today for hand-picked deals exclusively for members.
So that's been another episode of Let's Talk Travel. With the events of the last 24 hours, it really shows what Let's Talk Travel is all about. Thoughts and opinions on the most up-to-date subjects affecting travel right now. This is still very much, as we say, a live issue. We will be returning back to this, obviously, in the coming weeks and months ahead. So if you've got any comments about the things we've talked about, any disagreements or agreements with any of us, please do leave a comment on wherever you're watching or listening to this. We are very available on podcast platforms. So if you're on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, whichever one you're on there, please follow us. Please rate our show. And if you're watching this on YouTube or listening on YouTube, or you've not even found us on YouTube, we are on Let's Talk Travel Podcast. Subscribe on there, leave any comments, and we'd be very, very happy to have them. That's been the end of the show. Thank you so much, James and Will, for jumping on this very, very quickly. Really hot takes, really interesting thoughts about what the FCDO have done here. As I say, we'll come back to this again and again and again, I'm sure, but I appreciate your time, and hopefully it's been a great listen for all of you who've tuned in. That's it for us. Thank you very much.